Guys, thank you so much for joining me today. Joining us today. Most of you will know me. I'm Louisa, Sales and Marketing Director here at Nest, and I today am joined by the wonderful Lak Loi. Hello, Lak.
Hello, Louisa, and hello, everybody that's joining for this webinar today and taking the time out this lunchtime.
So, Lak has been firstly a client of ours for, gosh, 20 years,
Yeah,
15, 20
about
years, been a very,
thereabouts.
very long time. He runs a JKD club in the city of London, which bodes well, right? Because it's predominantly an adult
It is. It
sport,
is.
so to
Yeah,
speak, adult art.
it is. That is true. Yeah,
Yeah,
we're in the heart of the city, so a lot of corporate professionals, but we do have people from all walks of life, which is, I think, the beauty of martial arts. We get to meet the wonderment of a wide variety of people that walk through the doors with all sorts of diverse backgrounds. So it's wonderful. Feel blessed when they walk through and you get to experience, that journey with people from such diverse ranges of backgrounds, not just corporate, business, students. We've got billionaires to paupers, and we've got yeah, it's just amazing, just amazing.
yeah. I mean, I guess everyone that's on this webinar will resonate with that. That's the beauty of martial arts, right? It has no prejudice. It has no judgment. It's
Yeah,
for anyone, and everyone is on equal ground. You step on those
yeah,
mats, it doesn't matter if you're a billionaire
yeah,
or a
yeah,
pauper, everyone's
yeah.
at the same
Exactly.
level, right? Yeah,
Exactly. It's an even ground.
even Stevens. Well, listen, I will give a very short introduction. Probably won't be the introduction that Lak deserves because he is a very prolific practitioner and instructor. He is third generation Bruce Lee, JKD student and teacher. Um, Lack has written 4 books that have all been published, 2 of which have been bestsellers and Amazon #1s. He runs podcasts. He's going to tell you all about this. But the reason that I wanted to bring Lack on here and present Lack to you and let Lack share his story and his current experience is because I had chosen Lack to be a speaker at the Velocity event, which was supposed to happen in March. And the subject of Velocity was high performance. That was the ethos of what we want to present to you. And Lack very much embodies the spirit of high performance. Now, again, just to pre-frame you as well, Lack and I have also been friends for many, many years. In an odd turn of events, my best friend married one of Lack's very close friends. So we have known each other for a very long time. So I know the spirituality of Lack. I know Lack in all of his forms, and I know that what he does. What Lack won't tell you is he's also a very, very big wig in London, in the city. He has a high profile job in IT and corporate. So um, Lack has a very wide understanding of high performance, both physically, mentally, performance wise, career wise. And he's put all of that together from all of these learnings. He's put that together in this 9-step journey to self mastery. His ethos is self realization and self mastery. So that's why I wanted to bring Lack here in front of you and present that to you. So, Lack, I'm going to stop going on about you and I'm going to let you introduce yourself. And then, if it's okay, I'm going to ask you some questions about your program, about what you teach, about everything you've learned, and you can share that with people on the webinar.
Absolutely. Absolutely. First of all, thank you so much for that amazing introduction. As some would say, now even I'm interested in what I've got to say. But thank you so much. That was really humbling. So as Louisa said, we're all on our own journeys in life, and sometimes we use martial arts as a tool set and mechanic to help us um, go through our own sufferings. And I was called to Jeet Kune Do through a vision, through a calling that I had um, over 21 years ago, about 6 months before my firstborn was about to arrive. what my wife at the time would have said was really poor timing on my behalf. Um, uh, but as it was a calling, she gave me the blessing to go ahead and pursue this. At that time, I was based in New York. I was working for a fintech. We provided trading platforms, trading systems to tier one, tier two investment banks and brokerages in the US. And um, the calling was you needed to go and find Bruce Lee's martial art and learn it. It will help you, but most importantly of all, it will help others. Uh, at the time, I grew up and was drip fed on Bruce Lee movies, was a massive fan. Um, and this vision calling came when I was 29. I practiced Shotokan karate from 7 to 11, and then there was a massive gap up until that calling. I did not know Bruce Lee had a martial art. I didn't know it had a name. I didn't know he'd left that behind. I didn't know people were practicing it. I didn't know it was denominated in the US because he was based there. Um, I knew nothing. Internet had no information on it. And so it was a bit of a challenge finding it. It just so happened to be I ended up walking into a one of the health clubs uh, that I used to frequent when I was up in Midtown working on a client site. After finishing off at the office, I ended up walking into that gym, walked past the studio, and I noticed a sign on the studio saying "Learn Bruce Lee's martial art," and I remember snapping my neck so hard because those words just jumped out at me and like almost like punched me in the side of the face, saying, "Here you are, pal." And that was it. The rest is history. I did go through my own masterless process, my own journey of depression and my own personal challenges as life throws at you. But life is always serving you. It's not happening to you, it's happening for you. And it just so happened to be 21 years later, um, you know, I come to realize that that process was a wake up call to me to step into this process to serve others through this process of self mastery, having had to go through it myself and help get myself out of um, that unresourceful state. And as a consequence of that, I ended up becoming a third generation Bruce Lee's martial art instructor in Jeet Kune Do. I ended up luckily falling in with a highly reputable Jeet Kune Do organization, or several during that time. I started off with one of Bruce Lee's sparring partners schools, Ted Wong schools. Ended up being certified under the Wednesday Night Group as one of their executive advisors for their board, and I represent them in Europe right now. And um, I would not known wouldn't have not known any better. I could have fallen in with any charlatan school. Um, uh, so I'm very blessed that everything was meant to be the way it is. But most importantly of all, life was serving me lessons constantly throughout that. And the process that I went through to help cultivate my own mastery, and I'm not a master, we're all on a process of learning. But you can get more resourceful as you go along that journey. And as a consequence, um, when you there's a the saying I live by. Once you find your gift, you have an obligation to give it away. And as a consequence of going through that process, I recall making mountains of notes and then coming to the realization, what am I going to do with this? And then realizing that I had to give it away. And that's where the books came from. Also, a process of um, being on my own spiritual quest as well. And as part of being on that process, coming to um, and going through the process of self realization, as in getting in tune with your higher self. So self mastery is works on various different levels, which we'll talk about as we go through the rest of this webinar. So here we are. We've got all these wonderful gifts to share with the world, and really the point is that if we can help make a positive transformational impact in one person, then this lifetime has been worth living.
Wow. And that's how we begin the webinar. So much more of that to come. Okay. So, um, like knowing what you teach and knowing what most of the people on this webinar will teach. You all walk into your dojo to teach what we would perceive to be a physical art.
Yeah,
Although I know many people, the reason that we love it so much is that children and adults alike learn so much more than the physicality of it,
yeah,
in terms of life lessons and life skills and respect and
yeah,
all of those wonderful things. I know from your perspective, because of your um, self-taught, self-mastery, you have more of that non-physical side that you try to teach as part of your lesson. So what does that look like, as well as the physical
yeah,
JKD? What
yeah,
else is involved in your lessons?
yeah. So before I go into answering that question, I'd like to clarify one thing. The journey is not just self-taught. I was lucky enough to have resources to go out and learn, pay for extracurricular courses after this. And I would say I have invested in personal development teachings for myself in excess of 60 to 70,000 pounds. Just going through courses, and some of them are instructorship courses and things like that. So over time, it's been a huge investment in myself, uh, not for myself, but in pursuit of being the best teacher I can for others. Now, to answer your question, what do classes look like? I think, I think, as part of the first question, what I'd like to say is, generally, martial arts focus on the physical aspect. Uh, and really, if we were to look at ourselves holistically, there's four elements to us. We've got our physical body, we've got our mental body, we've got our emotional body, and then we've got our subtle body or our spiritual body. And the idea is if you're only focused on the physical body, you're only going to be a 25%er. And what we want to do is trying to be 100%, right? So we want to try and cultivate what Bruce called a totality. And so we try and incorporate teachings that pull all of those four aspects together. Sometimes we focus more on, say, the body and the mind, and other times we focus more on the emotion and the spirit. But the consistent uh, element to it is that we use physical movement. We use the martial arts movement to help reprogram the body, the mind, the emotion, and the spirit, so that ultimately we realign all of those. Because there's within within our beings, when our body, mind, emotion, and spirit are out of sync, so any one of them's out of kilter, that's where we get into a state of dis-ease. And then when we realign those is when we become into a state of well-being or harmony with ourselves. And ultimately, that's what we're trying to help students realize, through practice, awareness, and action, is where is there misalignment and how to then realign it.
Okay. And so those four elements, are they what you cover in your nine-step journey to self-mastery? Are those
Absolutely.
nine steps, do they lead to the totality of these four elements that need to align?
Absolutely. So we what we sum it up is into three segments: body, mind, emotion, then spirit. So we couple
Okay.
the mind and emotion together.
And if I were to buy this book, for
Yeah.
example, if I were to buy it off the shelf, if I were to come to your classes, what would be your objective for me? What would I hope to gain from knowing that journey, from
Yeah.
following those steps?
The ultimate, well, if I was to quote Bruce Lee said, true mastery transcends any particular art. It stems from mastery of oneself, the ability developed through self-discipline to be calm, fully aware, and completely in tune with oneself and the surroundings. Then, and only then, can a person know himself. Um, so one aspect is knowing yourself. Only when you know yourself can you know others. And I give you an example. A typical example is if you are dishonest with yourself, then there is absolutely no way you can ever be honest with anybody else,
Mhm.
right? Because you're not in tune with yourself and you're not being truthful to yourself because you don't know yourself. The idea is to realize who you are, or at least align yourself to your own truthful self first so you can speak truth. But people that may not be truthful to themselves don't speak the truth because they don't know what their truth is and they don't know how to express it. Maybe they attach to a false avatar of themselves, maybe a false expectation what other people want them to be. So they miss who they are, or they are misdirected from who they are. And the definition of in the Vedic scriptures of evil is not one of some demonic being, but is anything that distracts you from you being who you really are. So anything that's pulling you away from who you are to your core. And when you're not in your core and you're not aligned to that, and you're not aligned to your own truth, you know something's not right, and that doesn't sit with you right. And what people then tend to experience is chaos and cloudiness in their mind, and that comes out in a really ugly way. It comes out in frustration, it comes out in anger, and all the negative types of emotions such as jealousy and envy as well, because they see other people aligned to who they are and in their own way succeeding to be that, whereas they're not. And that's where all these negative expressions come out. So we have that aspect. So you've got the chaos and the clouded mind. That may lead to a narrow-mindedness, a limited view on things in life, and as a consequence, it will also limit the opportunities that you have in life because you're reducing that by blinkering yourself as a consequence of that, and you may not even be aware of that. And this is the whole point. As we said right at the beginning, it all starts with awareness and then leading to action. Um, then it comes to a point of where once you have a realization around that is i- if you are in an unresourceful state, then people tend to live by limited beliefs and unresourceful mindset. And that will limit the possibilities that they have. And oftentimes, there are fears and inner fears and obstacles that stand in a person's own way, which will prevent them from maybe doing something because they're scared what the outcome might be. Um, and and as a consequence of all of those things, the internal expression externally, i.e., their communication, is frustration and anger, as mentioned a moments ago. And that frustration and anger will lead to you feeling jarred in life. Everything you do feels blocked or jarred, or one step forwards, two step backwards. And as a consequence, you tend to focus on those weaknesses and the failures that you're experiencing in that moment in time, and it'll put you into a state of feeling like you're falling behind in life, especially in today's day and age where you've got social media and you're looking at people in social media and seeing the best of people's lives and comparing yourself and feeling um, uh, uh, a fear of missing out, for instance, or feeling insecure about yourself and feel uh, feel denigrated, you self-denigrated, right? And that has a negative impact on that person's being. So when we talk about when we're talking about the 9-step process of self-mastery, what we're talking about is people that are starting from that kind of denomination or any element of that. They might be further down where it might just be the expression aspect of things. But what we were trying to do is help people to cultivate that. So with the 9 steps, firstly, we decided to give each 9 step really cool Bruce Lee-esque names that are inspired by his movies and quotes and philosophies. So the 9 steps are stillness, empty your teacup, possess an eagle eye, uh, think and become, and then there's water, right? Honestly, honestly express yourself, be like water, power side forwards, and stay ahead. So how does that translate to all of those kind of problems that any particular person could experience? Well, we're turning that chaos and cloudy mindset into calm, clarity in your thoughts and emotions, firstly, because without that, you're not going to progress. You ain't going to see anything. Second thing is you're going to take your narrow-mindedness because you're not open to anything else. And then what we're going to do is open your mind to new possibilities because that's the only way you're going to get growth. So this is the first step to allowing new awareness to come in, right? Because without engaging the awareness abilities, you can't grow, right? So you have to have awareness to identify what it is that you need to do. Then the next aspect is where you have the blinkered view on life. And what we want to do is say, okay, now let's open your ability to see, not look, but see. I'll give an example, right? If you're single and you're looking for a partner, you struggle to find one. But when you stop looking and you will see that person's right in front of you, and you're like, ah, there they are. They were always there. You just didn't see because you were looking too hard. So the idea is to then, you know, is to be able to see what's happening, see opportunities, see new possibilities. Then we talk about the limited uh, beliefs and the unresourceful behaviors and mindset. So with that, what we want to do is we want to take that and we want to shift your mindset, right? We want to take it from limited to unlimited. So how do you do that? Well, you need to create a mindset shift. And as a consequence that you put yourself into a new way of thinking. And only when you've got your new way of thinking can you then start to take your fears and obstacles, usually yourself standing in your own way, and say, okay, can you move out the way? And let me move forward. So you learn to conquer your fears and overcome your obstacles. And then once you have done that, all of those stages are all internal stages. And then from the next stage, which is the honestly express yourself stage, is we start to express ourselves out into the world. So these are externalized stages. So we take in our knowing ourselves to learning to know others. So the next stage is you take the frustration and anger and how you express yourself. And sometimes it can be violence, right? Which is what a lot of kids turn to martial arts, for instance, even adults, where they can't express themselves, and they express themselves with these bad boys. So we're
Mm.
saying, okay, now let's express yourself honestly, okay, truthfully, right? Now you've got a better understanding of who you are and where you're coming from, and you've got a vision and clarity on where you want to go. Um, and then only then will you start to change your jarred lifestyle or being stuck and start to free that and start flowing like a free river. So you get into that peak state flow where life starts to happen superfluously. Now that is an ascended state of being, an ascended state of mind, and it takes you to work on yourself, and it takes a lot of work to work on yourself in order to get into a peak state where everything you do just works out. Everything you think of just happens. Something that you want just appears. And we're not talking about law of attraction here. We're actually talking about you now uh, being aligned with a higher state of consciousness in yourself, but it's all happening through your mind. And uh, then we start to look at, okay, so rather than focus on our weaknesses and failures, now we start to say, okay, but what are my strengths, and what is my purpose, and how can I be driven by that? So now the focus shifts. Your compass is shifting completely to a whole new way of being and being driven by who you are, but not by what you're not, right? And then the last step is about rather than feeling like you're you're falling behind in life. Now it's about getting ahead, staying ahead, and working with the ebbs and flows of life. Okay, because life is it's like a wave. You know, you have highs, you have lows, but how can you stay in the middle, consistent throughout that, while keep moving forwards? And that kind of hopefully summarizes the 9-step process, but also most importantly of all, summarizes the emotional journey that we go through when we're going through life. And the thing is, this isn't a destination, because when people are on a process of self-mastery, there'll be your loved ones will be the first ones to point out, well, you know what, you're working on yourself, but why are you still getting frustrated? But the point is that instead of being frustrated for a whole day, after a few years of working on yourself or a few months of working on yourself, you might only be frustrated for an hour or 10 minutes or a minute or a split second. So the idea is, how can you compress these negative emotions into a smaller unit of time until eventually they're now gone? And what happens, just as if you're training and you're going from your white belt all the way to a black belt, the the further you go into your higher levels of rank, the progress seems smaller and smaller and smaller. But people around you will notice how good you are and how much progress you are making, even though it might be finite. But yourself might not recognize that, right? And it's one of those things where it's a constant sharpening of the sword. When the short sword is really sharp and you're just trying to get it that extra degree sharper, it's so finite that you might think you're not making progress, but you are. And other people may be quick to remind you that, you've just got frustrated or you've just got angry or you've just snapped. But how quickly can you, one, become aware of that, two, reflect and reapply your teachings, and three, try and avoid that. So be ahead of that if it does happen. So be aware of the emotional state before you have a response to something or a reaction, and go from a primal reaction to what we'll call it an intelligent response. So we're trying to shift that. For our reaction is primal, so untrained, and we want to train that to our intelligent response. Just like if you're training a punch or a kick, when you first learn a punch or a kick, without being taught, you're going to punch or kick without having any teaching. That's your primal reaction. But when you learn how to throw a punch and a kick in different scenarios, then you're going to respond intelligently, given that way, if you've got enough practice behind that. So, you might have heard of the 1,000, 10,000 rule. To practice a technique to get it takes 1,000 repetitions. For that to become an intelligent response or a subconscious response, you've got to practice it 10,000 times. And really, we want to get to that point where everything we're doing, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, we're responding intelligently in our highest being. So we're putting our best foot forwards as much as possible until we're always putting our best foot forward. So it's a process of purifying body, mind, emotion, spirit. It's a purification process.
I have many questions as you talk about this, Lak, but the first, I guess, that comes from someone who has not been exposed to this type of information before, someone who is probably quite distant to these concepts. I come into this and think, "Oh, it's so out of my comfort zone. It's
Mm.
so, to be in this superfluous state
Yeah,
that's not law of attraction, that is an actual physical, mental being,
yeah,
seems almost like an untouchable paradise scenario. So I
yeah,
guess that, for someone like me, makes it almost fantasy that we could even achieve that level
yeah,
of alignment. So when people come to your club,
yeah.
is this something you talk about? Do they know that this is the kind of thing that you teach? Do they already come with that expectation? Or is it something that's just so integrated into the way you teach JKD that it's a natural progression for them? Do they know that those teachings are integrated into the physical teaching?
So other than our marketing materials where we say, we teach martial arts and self-mastery, I want to take it a step back and say that when we first started martial arts and I first started teaching martial arts, and I went into martial arts for myself originally. I thought it was about me. Um, and it wasn't. I went into it for while I was going through my own uh, low time in life. I went into it thinking this is going to keep my body strong. I didn't think it's going to keep my mind strong. So I was just thinking about the superficial aspects of things. I had no idea, and so that's what I went into it for. And then I eventually I got pushed into teaching. I didn't want to become a teacher, and I was really shy. I hate public speaking, um,
Really?
and I'd be the first one to kind of hide in the background. Um, and I got pushed into teaching. And what happened when I started teaching was something amazing. I started I started to get feedback um, from students and some of the students' parents at the time, saying that you've really made a positive impact on my child. And people would say, you've changed my life with something you said. And it would be the smallest thing, and you wouldn't even think anything about it, but it changed their whole outlook on life. And therefore, it was that nudge that helped them, rather than being diverted off the track, put back on track. It was that simple and that small and almost inconsequential, but massively consequential. And I started realizing, hold on a minute, what's happening? And I thought, well, if I'm having a positive impact on life, then surely this is more meaningful than making these corporates millions and millions of pounds. So I carried on doing it. And um, when I ended up moving down to London again, um, I didn't want to teach. I didn't want to set up a school, but I used to speak to my colleagues about it. And what happened was half a dozen of my colleagues got together and said, like, you've got to start up a school. There's 6 of us that want to train with you.
Mm.
And I said, what? Um, and then and my brother-in-law also kind of jumped in on that as well. So we had about 7 people kind of pushing me, twisting my arm. So I ended up finding a venue, and I thought, okay, let's just see if we can get waiting list of people that want to sign up. And we ended up with 21 people on the list. And I thought, what? So we started. And when I first started the school, um, I was a bit afraid that, did I know? Was I competent enough? If somebody challenged me, would I be able to hold my own? So it's very physically minded initially. And what happened was we attracted students that wanted to test their minerals. You know, it was all about, the physical challenge. So we took chunks at each other for the first 2 years. And what happened after about, I don't know, 12 or 16 students, we closed the school down, as in, like, we didn't take any more entrants for the first 2 years, and we just, you know, did that. And the idea was, subconsciously, I was asking myself the question, am I enough? Am I enough to teach these people? Am I really qualified to teach these people? Well, can I really stand up stand up for myself and handle the challenges should I need to? And after 2 years, I thought, I am enough. I am enough, and this is ludicrous. And I realized the naivety of it all. But in the earlier years, um, we attracted that kind of clientele that wanted to test their metal. That's all they wanted to do, and it was all about bam, bam. It was really hard. And then my mind changed because I came across these teachings. I came across Bruce Lee's chief definite aim, or definite chief aim, and I realized Bruce wrote this definite chief aim, which was his kind of vision statement or mission statement for his life. And he'd been inspired by a gentleman. a Dr. Napoleon Hill that wrote Think and Grow Rich. And Think and Grow Rich was the first, is renowned as the first personal development textbook in the West, a massive organization in the US. And this gentleman, uh, Dr. Napoleon Hill, he was mentored by Dale Carnegie, for instance.
Okay, yeah.
So, a really renowned figurehead within that industry, and he kicked off the personal development industry. And that's when I realized, hold on a minute. And one of my students, and this student, a good friend of mine, JT, he was one of my students at a school in West London. So we ended up with two schools because some of my uh, uh, family members and friends in West London wanted me to open a school there. So I gave in and ended up opening one there as well. And JT turned around to me and said, he goes, Lak, you know what, you're doing this, and he's, using, these mechanisms, and he was referring to, um, personal development terminology, which I didn't know at the time what he meant. And I said, is that good or bad? He goes, you're natural. He goes, you're natural. And that's when I started to realize that there was a connection to personal growth and martial arts, which is directly connected, but martial arts could help accelerate that personal growth from a different perspective, using a different tool set. And that's when I realized that the mind was so powerful that if we use the martial mindset in such a way that we could help people really step into and tap into the true potential and power. And that's where the coinage of words, martial mind power, has grown. From that moment onwards, the the focus went on to mindset, mental health, peak performance, corporate well-being. And that's the moment my students started to change. And I started to attract a thinkers crowd, right? People that wanted to work on themselves. I started to get inquiries saying, "Hey, Sifu, I'm suffering from lack of confidence and esteem, and I'm hoping that your school and martial arts can help me cultivate that." And I started to realize 95% of students coming through the door had mental health issues, right, or mindset issues. So they're not necessarily um, neurodivergent issues or uh, personal issues, just something jarring in their mind, right? And they just needed to address that. So that's how the shape of the class started to change. And then the teachings grew out of that. And once we had the teachings together, I started to deliver the teachings explicitly in class. And the thing was that, the big elephant in the martial arts industry is we all know martial arts can help cultivate the mind, the emotion, and the spirit. We know that. But we don't teach it directly. We all rest on the laurels that teaching the physical movement will help them, as a side benefit, attain an improved level of self-confidence, an improved level of emotional resilience, an improved level of whatever it might be. So this is why when the my work started to step in, it was like, okay, why don't we focus on those things directly using martial arts, addressing and using what we've pioneered and copyrighted, some technology where we're using physical motion to help reprogram the mind. We call it dynamic framing and dynamic anchoring. And that way we're targeting specific outcomes, whether it's to improve confidence or to improve your resilience in certain aspects of things, or whatever it might be as part of this 9-step process directly. And that was the point, that we're now going to go straight to the point, but we're going to use martial arts rather than classroom-based lessons.
And why martial arts? Why did you find that as a physical activity, martial arts works so well to deliver these internal messages and learnings?
I think that the best gauge is the feedback mechanism you get from your own students. when students are telling you how it's changing their lives for the better, it's having positive transformation and impact, that is your best gauge. That is your that is the best compass you got to tell you which direction you're going in and whether it's a direction that's actually benefiting people. Because the more people, from my standpoint, the metric that I work against is the more people I'm having a positive transformational impact on is a measure and gauge that the work I'm doing is working. And that's where it was born out of. That was always the gauge.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Are you able to give us an example? Because obviously, all the people here that teach martial arts on a day-to-day basis help us understand how those teachings translate into a physical lesson. So you have a class of people
Yeah.
that are all learning the same physical movements and are hearing the same learnings from you.
Yeah.
How does that translate into a lesson? How do you get this message across as part
Yeah.
of the physical training?
Let me give you a very simple example, right? So in Jeet Kune Do and Chinese martial arts, there's this idea of the bamboo principle. Okay. Now, when we teach the bamboo principle, Bruce said, when my opponent expands, I contract. When my opponent contracts, I expand. In other words, when your opponent's pushing, you pull. When your opponent's pulling, you push. Okay. Um, and there's certain technical martial arts drills you could do for that. So if somebody's pushing you, example, Aikido. Now the thing is, these teachings are agnostic to martial arts style, system, or method. So if you take Aikido, somebody's pushing you, you can you can yield to that movement and potentially turn and throw them. In judo, if someone's pushing you, you can turn and throw them. If someone's pushing you, you can turn, maybe parry and strike back in a kung fu, for instance. So the idea is you can use certain types of movements to help demonstrate that. Sorry. And then as a consequence, you're starting to embody that movement and the mind teachings while you're practicing. So at the end of the class, or while we're teaching the class, sometimes it depends on how we want to deliver it. But at the end of the class, we normally have a philosophical section where I'll help students take an issue that they've got and say, okay, well, if somebody's pushing you in life, I want you to envision that person pushing you in life. How are they pushing you? Which angle are they pushing you from? What's the intensity of that push? What kind of energy are they pushing you with? Where are they pushing you exactly? Where does it hurt? Now think about how are you going to yield to that? How are you going to roll with that? How are you going to dissolve that energy, right? And what do you need to do in life, right, whether it's in your personal life or your professional life, in order to yield to that, so that pressure that they're putting on you now no longer has any effect on you, but literally dissolves and rediverts off you, right? Or if you want to use a judo analogy, how can you then take that energy, roll into it, use their leverage, occupy their space, and then throw that energy into a new direction? And
Mm,
all of a sudden, now you start to see that movement evolve into a life skills movement, a life mastery movement where it's directly applicable to a certain application. So I had a student of mine, this guy, his family pretty much own a whole city in India, and he they have their their business is owned by the family, and the family sometimes have issues. So he said recently that he was in a boardroom meeting and he had to use one of the principles that I taught him just prior to him going to that meeting. And he said he came back so proud of himself, and I was so proud of him because he said, I kept my cool through that meeting. Otherwise, it would have been a bloodfest. He goes, I kept
mm,
my cool through that meeting and I managed to also steer them to the outcome that I wanted. Which was beautiful because he embodied the teachings, but most importantly of all, he could see the martial mechanics in operation in that moment, but in a completely different setting, which wasn't the dojo or the street, but it was a boardroom setting.
Mm.
with his uh, peers, you know, who would otherwise fight for getting their way or getting control or whatever it might be. So we're using these teachings in this way. So as you deliver these teachings, what we're doing is we're getting people and students to think in a whole new way.
Mhm.
So as I say, if you do the same result, you get the same outcome. But to get a different outcome, you need to do something different. So what we're saying is, you know, see from same things or familiar things, but in new ways. When
Mhm.
you start to do that, and this is why at the beginning of the process, the empty your teacup on possess an eagle eye, which is the open your mind and then learn to see new possibilities is really important, because that's enabling your awareness. Because the awareness is always the first step to you then being able to respond intelligently.
Yeah.
It's like if somebody's punching you, you know, you have to be aware that punch is coming. If you're not aware that punch is coming, it's gonna nail you and it's gonna hurt you. And so with the awareness, you then know which way you're gonna move, how much you need to move, um, um, what can you throw with it if you want to throw something with it, or if you don't want to throw something with it because you just want to restrain and subdue, then how would that look? So you don't always have to hit back hard. This is the other thing, because we're teaching consciousness. The process is about raising human consciousness, and to ultimately, if we raise human consciousness one person at a time, and that spreads like a ripple of like a ripple in the ocean of consciousness, then consciousness as a totality starts to increase around the world. The world becomes a better place because people are not thinking about themselves, they're thinking about each other, thinking about consequences. So we start this whole movement, and as a consequence of this movement, we're helping people get in tune with the higher selves. When they get in tune with the higher selves, there's something else happening on a spiritual level. And that's where, you know, you start to open the gateway into, okay, what next? And that what next is the next level of what we call beyond self-mastery, is self-realization.
It's a lot to take in. It's a lot to, and it's having an hour webinar certainly doesn't do it justice at all. You know, you're giving us a high level insight into what you've been studying for years and years and years. So it is quite abstract for us. You talked then about a movement, and I know from having spoken to you, you know, that part of learning this is you want to gift it to other people. You know, it's your duty to help other people understand that, you know, especially if the end goal is to have a society that thinks in this way,
Yeah.
which, you know, would be dreamlike. How do you plan on doing that? How do you push this out to more people?
So what we've done is we launched and published the book on which the works are based in 2016. Um, and so, you know, the information's been out there, but we also put together a modular video course, and that modular video course has got uh, two type of uh, two type of audiences. One is the self-study practitioner. So if you want to learn for yourself and you want to cultivate self-mastery for yourself, you can subscribe to that. And then the second type of um, person that can benefit from this are coaches. So these are coaches that are already might have a pre-existing concern. They might have a martial arts school or another coaching business. They might be into corporate well-being coaching. They might be into fitness instruction. They might be into personal development coaching, and martial arts instruction. But they want to add a new string to the bow. Or there might be a student that wants to become a coach and wants to learn how to become a coach using um, uh, personal development that's backed by martial artistry. And so then on that side, we've got a licensed certified coaching program, and we've delivered these through what we call the Martial Mind Power Academy, which is all online. People can do it from the comfort of their home, and Yeah, we're in the process of pre-launching that, and we're going to launch that officially at the UK Martial Arts Show, where uh, Nest will be also present as well. Yeah, we're we're really excited and looking forward to that, and hopefully that will give people access to a new resource pool of teachings and trainings that will help elevate them as martial artists, but more importantly, as human beings. Yeah,
Yeah, gosh, it's
yeah,
very, very powerful.
yeah,
It is incredibly powerful, and it's nothing I had ever really thought of before until I actually came to some of your talks. I came to one of your podcast events where you filmed, and I had the incredible privilege of seeing the Hare Krishna.
yeah.
What was his name?
It's Swami Keshava Maharaj.
Yeah, it's so enlightening. It's so fascinating that to someone like me, again, it just feels so far away that it's untouchable.
Yeah,
And I guess in doing this, you're making it potentially a reality for other people
yeah,
who could before never have
yeah,
reached that state, I guess.
for sure.
I'm just going to look for the link to your website, Lax, and just put it in the chat here. I know we're going to share it as well with everyone as a synopsis of this webinar. While I'm looking for that, does anyone have any questions for Lack? If you do, please do put them in the chat at the moment, and I'll read them out while I'm looking for this link. Um, and while people are thinking of their questions, like, I mean, do you have any kind of final words of wisdom to share?
Absolutely. I think firstly, thanks for reiterating, when you have a gift, you have an obligation to give it away. Uh, we've actually set a goal, and that goal is to try and leave a positive transformation impact on 1 million students within the next 10 years. So by 2035, May 2035, we'd love to have left that kind of positive impact on people's lives. We're not about legacy, can't care less about legacy. I believe legacies are kind of superficial to a certain degree. Uh, but it's really, what can you do in this moment in time to help somebody, a fellow human being, and elevate them to a whole new level of consciousness. So that's the first thing. The second thing I'd like to say is someone that's interested in becoming a martial mind power certified coach, what kind of transformation impact will can they expect for themselves and those that they teach? And for that, I'd say I'd like to quote Mahatma Gandhi. He said the best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others. Um, and on the same note, Yoko Ono also said something quite similar. She said, healing yourself is connected with healing others. So for those people that are wondering, I'm not healed enough to help others heal, the piece of advice I would give is when you heal others, your troubles start to heal, right? Your troubles start to heal.
That's incredible. Like, we have had some questions through actually. I know we don't have a lot of time, but um, we've had lovely comments actually. So, um, sorry, bear with me. Aruna's put thank you, very insightful and inspiring, and has also put, gosh, this chat is ever so hard to get down. Do you have any women in your JKD London classes?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think what I'd say is, on average, there's, the martial arts industry, with the statistics that I looked up recently on ChatGPT, 85% audiences in martial arts are men, and 15% women. That kind of also is similar in our school as well. um, so yes, absolutely. This is gender agnostic, sex agnostic, age agnostic, martial arts agnostic. Um, the thing about the thing about martial arts is um, the physical practice. Our physical practice over time, over age, will dwindle because our bodies may not be able to keep up with things. Okay, it's just the way it is, nature's way. And if we end up, being able to do that, then happy days. But the thing is, these teachings can still be taught in late into retirement, regardless. So this is why one of the things that we say is age agnostic, and is apolitical as well. So this is the thing, is accessible to everyone. So hopefully that answers that question.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got some more questions coming in as well. So Tim has asked, do you find most people have to have a little suffering to realize how great the world really is?
Tim, that's a wonderful question. What I'd say is there's three modes in which you're going to learn. Okay. First one is inspiration. Right? So somebody inspires you and you think, wow, this is amazing. You have an aha moment. Uh, and Most people, that if they're in a state of comfort, they forget about it after a while, don't do anything. Okay. Then there's conspiration. So you feel like the world's conspiring against you. Why is this happening to me? So that might teach you something, but it'll cause you a bit of discomfort, and you may or you may not be called to action. And the last one is desperation, right? That's when life's saying, hey, look, you didn't listen to me when I was inspiring you. You didn't listen to me when I was conspiring against you. Now you're in desperation, right? So, absolutely, 100%, every single human being on this earth is, and also is documented in the Vedas, right, is here to relieve or to learn themselves from inspiration, conspiration, or desperation. But we leave it too long, therefore we suffer.
Hmm.
We suffer because we ignore all the signals. So you have a choice. Now, this is why awareness is key. You have to start with the awareness. That's why the program starts with awareness. If you're not aware of stuff happening, you're just going to be closed-minded. And I think there's a question by Mark Pengali, which says,
Yeah.
"Hi, like amazing, thank you. What is your best advice on dealing with students that have developed too much ego?" Awareness. It always comes down to awareness. If they are not aware of their ego and the negative impact their ego is having to their progress in life, um, then they won't be prepared to resolve that. They won't be prepared to deal with that. And you may come to the point where, if you're teaching and your student has come to a point where you can't give them anything else, then you have to let them go, right? I've had to let a student go recently because of exactly that reason. Because after 9 years, the ego is too strong. And my obligation to a student is, the students come to me and I feel, well, there's a reason for that. I have to help them the best I can. But when you get to a point where you think, okay, now there is nothing more I can give to this student unless they were to let go of something. And if they're not let go of it, regardless of all the teachings you give, then you've done your bit, and that's okay. It's a shame, but you've done your best, and that's all that matters. And ego's a tricky one, because behind ego, there's one of the premises on which the program is based is that presenting problem is not the problem. So the ego is not the problem. It's what is it underneath that? What is their underlying fear, limiting belief, unresourceful state, which is causing that kind of behavior? That's what's underneath it. Now, can you get to the bottom of that? Will they let you get to the bottom? Have they invited you into that? If a student, if a student surrenders to you, he's inviting you into that process and you can help them. But if the student hasn't surrendered to you fully, you're not part of that process, and all of a sudden you can't do your job properly. So if you
Mhm.
feel that you're not having a positive effect on some student that's exhibiting ego, or that ego is starting to flare up, is because that student's getting frustrated and is becoming more and more insecure and scared of something that's happening in their life, and it's not you necessarily.
There's a lot to think about. Lots, but thank you. Very helpful. You've had a question from Aaron. Thank you so much, Lak. I'm currently finding myself struggling and mastering my mind as I'm experiencing a difficult financial stability. Do you have any advice on this?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I'm a firm believer that we are given everything we need at any given moment in time. And and as part of that, sometimes having a lack of something is helping us create an awareness around something. And that might be just a fear of not having enough, a fear of not being able to survive. But within that fear, we have to learn to still put our best side forward. Um, and sometimes that fear is pushing us into faith. Now, that faith means, and I'm not a believer, and I'm going to tell you why I'm not a believer, because believing something is thinking something is true without experiencing it. Okay. In other words, you don't know it yet. But knowing is different because with through knowing is you've had the experience. So what point I'm trying to make is I know through my own spiritual experience that if you lean into the faith, you'll be surprised what might happen. Okay.
Amazing. I've actually just put we've had a message from Aruna. I really like the alignment of the four elements. Will you expand on that in later webinars, maybe? I feel it's my biggest problem. My four elements are misaligned due to wanting to fit in with people. God,
Yeah.
that's so relevant, isn't it?
Yeah.
I've posted your book on here, but I'm not sure it's gone to everyone. So I'm just going to repost it again while you give some comment on that, Lak.
Absolutely. Absolutely. What I would encourage you to do is, if you've got the resources, is to sign up to the practitioner program. And that way you can start working through that yourself. I think I think with realigning the body, the mind, emotion, and the spirit, um, we have to do that inner work ourselves. Okay. Um, the reason we put the program together is to help give people the resources to be able to do that in their own time space. And the reason we put the certified coaching program together is to help people train up to help other people so that we can expand and spread the teachings as far and wide as possible. So, you know, there's a possibility we could do another webinar with Louisa, and then we'll happily share more information on that. But if you want to take some immediate action, then the teachings are already available to you. And the reason that we had to do it this way is I felt I was a bottleneck. One person can only make an impact on so many people. But if you've got people that can go to the teachings directly and remotely take on those teachings, they can work in their own time and space. If you've got coaches that are also spreading those teachings, all of a sudden it starts to magnify. And that I believe is the only way that you can spread it is through empowering others through empowering others. So,
Mhm.
yeah, if we're able to do another webinar on it, that's something we could have a look at. Uh, but in the meantime, do have a look at the practitioner course.
I've posted a link to your book, Master Your Life, on Amazon. So that's in the chat, and also your website, Martial Mind Power. So the guys can go on there, you can source any information you need, sign up to Lak's program. This is tip of the iceberg to all the unbelievable knowledge that Lak has. Um, guys, listen, we've kept you a very long time, and Lak, we've kept you way too long.
No,
We
no,
know you've got many more people to go spread the word to. So I really appreciate the time you've taken to spend with us and to talk to our guys. Amazing questions that you've asked. I'm so pleased that you're engaged with it. Um, and yeah, thank you so, so much. Like it's been an honor and a privilege to hear what you have to say. And I think we've all learnt from it today. So thank you. Thank you everyone for joining us.
thank you so much, everybody, for your time.